Hey, Rachel, how you feeling?
New phone, who this?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you should put your face on here. Everyone wants to see your face, not your.
Nope. I didn't even know it was sunny out today till I saw you in the car. I haven't even looked outside since it was dark out.
Oh my God, what do you got? Blackout curtains going on?
No, but my blinds are closed because I've been sleeping.
Yeah, it is not a cloud in the sky and 60 degrees. Beautiful day. I wish I had a
Nice.
sunroof today.
You do. What's up there?
I don't.
It's glass up there. Oh, that's your windshield. It's your
Oh yeah,
windshield.
that's my windshield up there. It does look like I got a sunroof. Man, I'm bougie. Take that. But I did get my phone to charge at least in my car. But
That is weird.
you're coming through Bluetooth. Yeah.
I think I had a hard time syncing my phone too when I first got it. But it should just automatically, you plug it in and you hit play. I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, but it's funny because of the cords that I purchased yesterday. Because it's iPhone 15 uses a different cord
Mm-hmm.
than the 11, and I plug it into the USB port that I have that connects my Apple Play. It doesn't register.
Mm-hmm.
Only like charge my phone is weird. But I go back to my 11, have everything I need in the car. I get a nicer phone. Car doesn't work for shit. I gotta get a new car.
That'd be funny if that's what it was. Oh no, you need to update your
Yeah,
car. Your
sorry,
phone's
your
too
Camry
new.
doesn't work. You need a newer, nicer car. But my son's car is nicer than mine.
Oh, you know this is being recorded, Jerry.
That's okay. His car is nicer than mine. He's got the wireless charging port like in the like underneath this thing,
Oh,
and
you just set it on there?
yeah, you just set it on there, and it's got the wireless Apple or CarPlay instead of having. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
so he's just getting his car and it's charging and Apple Play works. I'm like, dang,
Nice. He got a Kia, right? Or a Hyundai?
Hyundai Elantra 2023.
Nice. Brand
It
new?
is nice. No, used.
No.
CarMax, yeah.
Oh.
22 maybe. It's a 2022. Maybe it's 22, I think. But it's real nice.
Yeah.
And it drives itself. He was driving and he literally like sets the cruise control and lets go of the wheel and it drives itself.
Oh. I'm scared of
Yeah.
stuff like that. No.
Well, he's like, it just sits there and like I say, we're on the interstate or on even on Friendship Road coming home from work. It'll take a turn for me. And he just sits there, watches it like, what? So he got the bougie car with the base model price because they didn't know it did all this stuff. So,
Good morning.
Hi, David.
good morning.
How are y'all doing today?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Cam, where are you driving to now?
I'm going through my walkthrough at Statham and then over to Lawrenceville to close the deal.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. Closing day is always a good day.
It's a great day. It's payday. Now I'll be unemployed again.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, I appreciate y'all joining. What we're doing as part of education, just so you guys know, in what Dina would like for us to do is to have about 6 or 7 different topic points, like negotiation being one, listings, open houses, buying, selling, such as that. And so this month, I took on negotiation as far as that goes. And negotiation can either be a smooth process or it could be a very rough process. How have negotiations gone for you guys this year so far?
So far, it's been pretty good with negotiations, and it's just how you talk to the other agent and how you communicate more than anything. is where I've seen the most success, is being able to just have normal conversations without bickering.
Yeah, yesterday it was funny. I was walking through the lobby of my building and I ran into an agent I had done a deal with in this building before, and we were just talking about business and everything. And he said that, I've really had a good year, but it has just been a pain to get through the deals. And I found that interesting, to see that. Because other than one where the other agent just would not be responsive to me whatsoever, and I ended up dealing with the buyer on the deal. It was on a commercial deal. All of ours have been pretty smooth for the most part, even though I did want to kill a client last night. But and that's a topic for another day, ways to kill your client. With that. But what about the rest of you guys? Have negotiations been smooth, rough?
I haven't had any troubles with the agents. It's, the one that I had that kind of fell apart was not the agent. It's just, what the buyer wanted and what the seller was willing to do. But do you think that the issues that people are having maybe just because they're dealing with newer agents?
It can be sometimes. Sometimes it can be arrogance. How many of y'all have had the proverbial, well, I've been in this business for 114 years and done 7,562 deals. It's inevitable once a year you hear that. That conversation. And it's very frustrating when you hear that conversation. To say the least. And you just got to sort of let that one blow by. Let that one blow by. So don't let that get to you. A conversation, part of negotiation also is actually, and let's go from point one. Or let me ask you a question. When do you think negotiations start in a transaction?
Before I write an offer.
You want to place an offer.
Okay. How about the rest of you guys?
When you first meet the
Before I write
people.
an offer, that's when I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jan. I think you're negotiating with your client too from the beginning.
Yeah, on one side of it. But let's take it from the point of view, your clients, let's say you're the buyer client or the buyer agent. And this is an important thing that we'll discuss, or I want to get opinions on negotiating when you're the listing agent and negotiating when you're the buyer agent, because there's a difference in how you do those things. So my opinion is that negotiations start when you make that first contact or first reach out to the other agent. And in this conversation today, it's really more about how we negotiate with other brokers and such as that. And the reason why I say on that very first conversation, and y'all will probably raise your hands, have you ever gotten off the phone with somebody, with another agent, and going like, oh gosh, I really don't want to end up having to make an offer on this property, because they're maybe a bit acerbic or acidic in their remarks, or they act like they don't care. I mean, I ran into that yesterday on a commercial deal, where they're not very forthcoming, or something of that nature. And from that point, you got to figure out what your strategy is, whether or not, my goodness, there's a lot of people here today. That's awesome. Are you straightforward? Are you their best buddy? Whatever the case may be. The other part of it is, and y'all open up and agree to disagree or whatever the case may be, is how you present the offer. How many of you guys have made an offer and won the offer and been told that part of the reason why you won the offer is one of two reasons? Number one is because you're KW, got to put that plug in there. Or number two is that the offer that you made was done very professionally.
All the time I get that when I win an offer. It's because it was such a clean offer.
Not so much it was a clean, not so much it was a clean offer, even though that helps, especially with what we've been in.
Yeah, clean as in all the exhibits were there, all the lines were filled out properly, all of their information was filled out properly, everything was done, and it made life easier on the selling agent to say that they accepted it because everything was complete.
Right. Right. Did you guys hear that? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten that back, is always have the prequal letter with it. You guys know good and well, do not go out with people unless they're prequal. Also I will throw this in here, and I know this is going to be a larger, and this doesn't have to do with negotiations, or maybe it does with your client, is please do not be going out without a buyer brokerage agreement in place, and make sure that in that buyer brokerage agreement, you have 3% in if the other side is not paying. Somebody I know who owns a small brokerage up in Jackson County, up in that area, Jefferson, that area, they had the broker had 3 contracts come in that was the buyer's agent was to receive nothing in commission. So that's starting to show up now, and you need to learn ways to protect yourself on that. But having a clean, organized, pulled together pre-qual letter attached offer is going to make a difference, independent of whether or not it's a multiple offer situation or not. It's just reality, because you're making the right impression. So let me stop for a second. What questions, especially for maybe some of the younger agents, what questions do you have about negotiations? What have you run into that has sort of buffaloed you, or you don't know how to walk through, such as that? Because we definitely have, a few veteran agents on here who can help answer some of that stuff. I can also sit here in dead silence also. So
No, you can't.
yeah, that's probably true.
Something while they speak. So I can tell you that tomorrow I am closing on probably one of the hardest deals I've had to close in 2 years. But it's been an absolute pleasure because the other agent is professional and responsive, and we pick up the phone and we talk to each other. And there's no animosity. I mean, both sides have had huge issues to get to close, but between the 2 agents, we never put any sort of animosity on the table. And so we're comfortable calling each other and trying to work out the deal. And it's not all over text and email and all that other stuff. And so I think that is absolutely key in negotiations.
It's a team effort. You both are trying to bring it, to the closing table. What were some of the challenges in that deal? Because I'm sure that went into negotiating on stuff.
Yes, so we received an off-market offer on an old property that I had listed, and it's involving a 1031 exchange. And 3 days after we went under contract, the seller decided she's not selling. And so there was a lot of negotiations and different, creative ideas to get what she needed from the buyer. So it was a little atypical, but very complicated. And it's been 2 months in the making. We're closing tomorrow. Everybody's happy. But
Congrats.
it was just a really difficult deal on both sides.
Right. Okay, so y'all have had a few seconds. What are some challenges that you've seen in negotiations that if you could ask a veteran agent, how would you walk through this? Y'all's negotiations have all gone perfect all the time, no matter what.
Well, the ones that I've seen most recently, David, are where the seller is defaulting and refusing to close. And that is terrible because you can't sue the seller.
Right.
So that's happened a few times to some of the agents in our office recently. I mean, right up till the day of closing, seller decides it's not going to sell.
What's the remedy for the buyer if the seller is refusing to close? Just to get their earnest money back?
They get their earnest money. They can't sue the seller, so they're out of luck.
Sue the seller. I thought the seller can't sue the buyer.
the seller, wait a minute, the seller can't sue.
Buyer can sue the seller for damages and default, but the buyer's only recourse I'm sorry, the seller's only recourse is to get the earnest money.
Unless it's otherwise specified in the contract,
Right,
which it
right.
used to be, you could have a choice between the two.
Right.
Right.
But
Well, that's true. Well, anyway, most of the time there's nobody sues anybody. They just, you
no,
know, they just go on, but it's been terrible for some of our agents.
huh? See,
And
I've
for the
never
buyer
had.
side.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I forgot who the agent was in the office, where a seller refused to close out the deal, and it got very nasty at the end of the end of the day. You know, where they were past it, you know, past certain points, on doing that. For you veteran guys that's on here, when you're negotiating, so let's talk about the different parts of the deal. When you're negotiating the original contract, not the ATAC, you know, those parts of it, repairs or anything of that sort. What are some of the bigger things that you see that are challenges, like in terms of pricing or in terms of closing dates, in terms of those are the big ones, you know, due diligence. How have y'all attacked um those scenarios in being able to work through that with another agent or the other side?
So I think for me, I have a really different point of view on due diligence than most people. If something's wrong with the house, it needs to be addressed in some form or manner with this buyer or another buyer. So, it's great to have 1 or 2 days or no due diligence, but if you're not in a position where you can demand that, like, I don't care if it's 5 days, like, we're going to work it out or we're not going to work it out. And if we're not going to work it out, my seller has to fix that to get the next buyer. So I really don't push, like, I need, 1 day for due diligence. I'm like, let's just, evaluate the situation and work it out. And,
Right.
Also it's stressful on me. I'm usually the listing agent. I almost never take buyers. That I have to get my seller to understand the situation, to agree to a price without maybe being able to get an expert out there. So I don't mind having 4 or 5 days for due diligence, whereas a lot of people really push for none or 2 or 1. Like, I'm just like, hey, something's wrong. We got to deal with it in some form.
And that's a good point to bring up. We're a little bit coming out of that market where we just say 0 days due diligence. We want it locked down. You know, that's all that there is to do. You know, that you can do. There really isn't any. I mean, if you're let's say 5 days or 7 days due diligence, you know, the argument is, well, we're off the market at an amount of time. Is that really that big a deal where you probably can make a good deal work? Is it worth a lot of these things that we're talking about, are they worth falling on the sword for, you know? Or is it, something I will say to clients all the time is, we want to win the war, we don't necessarily have to win this particular battle. You know, you have to, it's the old forest and trees analogy, with it, because sometimes clients come in there, and I mean, all of us have had a client who has gotten stuck on a $250 repair that they just refuse, to get done. And it's easy for us to say, okay, I'll just pay for it out of my commission. But really, should we be doing that? Is their responsibility to do it? Not to say that I haven't done it. Let me make that very clear. But it isn't really our responsibility on that. Um, so let's talk about closing attorneys for a second, because at least in Chattanooga or Georgia Legacy Group land, we're in a little bit different world, especially if you're part of the joint ventures now, in terms of closing attorneys and such as that. What do you all do in terms of requesting a specific closing attorney?
I always request a specific closing attorney, and I provide that information on my closing instructions.
Okay. What if they come in and I don't know who y'all use specifically. Let's say y'all use O'Kelly and Sorahan, and they come in and say, with Campbell and Brannon? What's their reaction? If they were the buyer coming in.
Yeah, so and Campbell and Brandon is somebody we like, so we would go with that. If it's somebody we don't know and we have pull, we would counter. If we don't have pull, and they're not asking for closing costs and we're not in a multiple offer situation, we'll go with somebody as long as we haven't had a bad experience with them.
Exactly.
But we do request, we give closing instructions, and I try and tell the other side, hey, we're handing you exactly what we want. If you really want this house, give it to us. So it's a gift to have closing instructions, and most people will honor that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, if you don't ask, you don't know, you don't know what you may get out of it. And there's a tendency more, and I see it more and more in private remarks on FMLS, where, preferred closing attorney, O'Kelly and Zorhan, Campbell and Brannon, such as that. I will say it's a little bit hard to push for who you want if they start asking, if they don't ask for closing costs. I will admit that I have been the obnoxious person who has said, O'Kelly and Zorhan, where somebody has said, we want $7,000 in closing costs. And I'll come back and say, okay, well, that's fine, but we want to use O'Kelly and Zorhan. They said, no, we want to use Campbell and Brandon. I said, good. I've literally said this to somebody, and this probably wasn't a good negotiating tactic, but I remember this particular situation where they just pissed me off. And they said no. And I said, okay, good. Then you guys can pay the closing costs, and we're happy to go to Campbell and Brannon. Please understand, I'm just using Campbell and Brannon as an example. I think they're a fine firm. So you gotta sort of watch what's going on. And Ruth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in the contract, actually the buyer has the legal right to pick the closing attorney. Is that correct? Or she just left me, hanging.
She's on mute.
Yeah, but she may be off doing laundry or something. I have no idea.
On that one, yeah, that the buyer does have the right to choose. So you can't, as a seller, you can't force them to use who you want to use. You can only suggest.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, I don't want you guys thinking, oh, you can just force into a situation. At the end of the day, they do have the legal right because of that. And
and I apologize because I couldn't figure out how to get the mute off.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
It's the technical things that get me.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
So
y'all worked that all out well.
So my question to you, Ruth, and I think it got answered, is that actually in the GAR contract, the buyer has the right to choose the closing attorney. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's true.
Okay.
Unless they change it. They change it all the time. So I could be wrong about that.
Yeah,
too.
the last time I checked, they did. I just wanted everyone to be aware of that, because you may get that thrown at you. And instead of saying, oh no, they don't, that type of thing, to have that stated correctly. Okay, let's talk about, I'm trying to go through a contract, thinking of different points on there. Have y'all ever gone into a debate on earnest money? Because, the standard had always been that earnest money was usually 1% of asking price in Georgia. Now it's different in different states. I'm starting to hear more and more that the standard is 2% on there. What have you guys heard?
So we do ask for 2% in our closing instructions. And if you have a really qualified buyer and they're putting down, 10, 20%, there should be no reason why they should be afraid to put more earnest money up if they really want the property. It's a sign that they're a strong buyer, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. How have y'all confronted that conversation? Because buyers, and I agree with you, I don't have a debate on that, but buyers in their mind are going like, well, I don't want to put anything at risk. I mean, I can tell you in 17 years, I've never lost earnest money for somebody. I've always kept very, very tight, on there. but have y'all run into that argument before?
I'm seeing it now and I'm surprised, especially on new builds where they're asking 5 to 10% in earnest money. And there's multiple offer situations on new builds and you're being beat out. Do people putting 10% down for earnest money?
Okay.
Well, see
I do
that an awful
so
lot.
little new build. I'm not very educated on that.
Well, what I was gonna say is that I can see why people might be more concerned about having the earnest money, because there's so many ways. You can't believe the numbers of during the week, how many earnest monies people are losing. So it's real important to go by dates and things like that. So something silly like that won't cause you to lose earnest money. But
so what you're saying is that you're seeing on a weekly basis where buyer clients are losing their earnest money in deals because they've gone past their dates and then trying to terminate.
Sometimes the buyer's the agent themselves and they lose their own earnest money. That's pretty pitiful. But we had that happen this month. So it's keeping up with the dates. That form that you put at the front, I've forgotten what that form is called. You just list everything that's going to happen and all that. I really think agents should use that form a lot more and send it to everybody so that there's no discussion about when was binding agreement date, when is due diligence up, when is the inspection period up. So everybody knows those things. So there's no discussion about, well, we didn't make this time or that time, because that, I think for new agents, that's especially important because, it's hard to keep up with all this stuff, and especially if you got more than one contract going at the same time.
It is, and actually, it's interesting you bring. I was going to go deeper into that. For our group, we actually do have a sheet. It's not there is a GAR sheet. I think it's actually entitled "List of Important Dates" or something of that sort. Do never ask me for a form number because I will not know what it is. I can even tell you a purchase and sale contract form number is. But we do in our group, we actually do have that list of important dates, and there have been, to Ruth's point, is that there has been confusion where when we send it to the other side, and let's say they have a transaction coordinator like what Suzanne does for us, with it, no, it's really this date, and we have to go back and talk about it, but at least we're talking about it right then before it goes into an argument to do that. But to Ruth's point, also, when we send out that sheet, it goes out it's put into our DocuSign file. So we can go back and look at it easily. It goes to the closing attorney, the lender, and the other agent. And a lot of times we'll get one back from them. We make sure that they all line up, to each other. So honestly, out of this conversation today, that if you all can take a takeaway from this, put that into your deals. Because to Ruth's point, as you get busier, Amy, I know, and Lori and myself and Sandy and such, who are having multiple deals running at the same time, you can't keep all the dates straight. It's too much for the brain, and you'll eventually trip up, in doing that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll take it one step further. Our closing coordinator goes into my calendar and puts each of the dates on my calendar with a reminder 3 days, 2 days, and 1 days before. So, there's and we do everything you just said as well.
Yeah, it just makes
that's a great
so
idea.
much smoother. Yeah, I mean, I pay attention to that more than I actually do the closing day. I'm usually like, oh, we've got to do this tomorrow. I mean, Cam can attest to this. We were having a group text discussion this morning. Okay, who's going to be where and stuff, because we've got one client commercial who's the person I wanted to kill last night, who's demanding to close at 10 on Monday instead of at 2. But I've got to be at another closing. So Suzanne and I are splitting out, saying, okay, who's going where, to be able to do it. I'm less concerned about that than making sure that we're hitting our due diligence dates, our financing, appraisal contingency dates, at the end of the day. So please, you guys, like I said, if you take something away from this today, create a sheet like that. There is one in GAR. We're happy to give you our copy of what we have is no great state secret, what we're doing, or anything of that sort. So, any questions so far? Okay. So here's
David,
yes, ma'am.
back to the earnest money.
Mhm.
As sellers, when the crazy was happening, we were trying to get 3% or more. Now we still are trying to get 2%. And
Okay.
I hope that does become the standard.
Yeah, and I
Because
think, I will tell you, I have seen probably a 400% increase in people saying 2% now versus 1%. So
yeah,
I just may be behind the curve on that,
it,
and I need to move to 2%.
yeah, it's a great protection for your sellers, because
Yeah.
they do, especially if the house is lower priced, anybody can walk away, not anybody, but a lot of people are willing to walk away from $3,000, but maybe think twice on if it's six on a $300,000 home.
So as part of your negotiating, let's talk about that a little bit further because, you guys mentioned negotiating with your own clients. How do you talk them through doing 2% versus 1%?
Well, it definitely depends on whether it's a multiple offer situation. If it's a multiple offer situation, I make it very clear that skin in the game is definitely going to get the attention of the
Totally get.
listing.
Okay, so let me give you the scenario. Let's say it's a $500,000 house. There aren't multiple offers. You're coming in with, clean deal. It's pre-qualified by your alliance partner lender, whoever that may be. And you say to him, it's like, good faith money, earnest money, escrow, whatever you want to call it, we normally do 2%. And they say to you, it's like, well, when we've bought houses in the past, it's always been 1%. There's your scenario. How do you respond back to that?
You said no multiple offers?
No multiple offers.
I mean, I'm still seeing 1%, coming in. So I actually, if I don't have a problem with my buyer wants to put in 1% and there's no multiple offers and the house has been on the market for a while,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm on the buy side, I would put down 1% unless I
Yeah,
specify.
exactly.
It's just when I'm on the sell
Yeah.
side, I ask for 2%.
Same.
Okay.
Same.
So if you're asking for 2% on your side and there's no multiple offers and the buyer side said, no, we're only going to put 1%, how do you get them to try to change their mind?
So it depends, right? So as the listing agent, I try and prep my clients that we're not necessarily looking for the highest offer. We're looking for the highest offer that's going to get us to close. So I've probably had a conversation with their lender. I've had a conversation with their agent, and I have to make the best case scenario to my sellers, and we can counter or not counter based on that information.
Okay. And that brings up another great point that was in the meat of what you just said. How many of you guys, when you're the buyer's agent, now I know you give a pre-qual letter, but how many of you guys go to your lender and ask them to call the listing agent to back up the offer that we're doing?
Every time.
Yes,
Absolutely.
every time.
Is that standard operating procedure for you guys? There's one answer.
Yes.
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 Okay. You got the answer right. To do that, I can tell you there's been multiple times this year with all price ranges for me ranging anywhere from 300 to 900,000 where I have literally had the listing agent thank me for having that. And I tell them call my lender also. Whoever gets to who first, I don't care who does, but do that. And what's interesting is if you've got a lender that you've got a good relationship, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because we hear horror stories with other realtors. I can tell you that my lender, one of my three, I work with three different lenders, but my primary one, she'll do a bit of a PR job for me, for lack of a better word, with the other agent, and that helps a great deal too. You get that bit of an added bonus. in doing that. So if it's not part of your routine or checklist procedure, do make that, because it can help you out a great deal. And it adds to the professionalism that I'm trying to make sure you understand, these parts of negotiation to do that. So here's so any other questions on earnest money? Nothing? We can always go back to if someone comes up with something. So another question, or this is a touchy one. How do you walk through, and we talked a little bit about it, Amy mentioned to it, what are you doing on standard with due diligence days?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, are you asking for 5 days? If you're the buyer's agent, are you asking for 5 days, 10 days, 14 days? Are you, if you're the listing agent, are you trying to cut it down as tight as you can, and then break it down between a single offer situation or a multiple offer situation? How do you work your way through a conversation with the other agent on that, if it comes up?
I just
It's
had a
obviously
I just had a multiple offer situation. I had asked for 7. Now we were the highest offer, so there's no question we had an escalation clause. But the listing agent had asked if we could cut our due diligence down to 6 days. I think she said she only wanted to cut it 1 day, but I was concerned about going over the weekend. So I wrote in the clause about if it falls on a weekend or falls on a holiday.
Yep.
So we actually ended up getting 8 days because of that, because it was over. It ended on a Sunday, but then we had Monday the 9th that was a holiday. So we ended up getting all the way. But I agreed with her with the 6 days, but I wrote in that stip and she was fine with that.
Yeah. Do you guys know what the stip that Sandy's talking about? I mean, I use it on every contract.
I
And
hate that step. If I'm on
And
the
okay, let
listing
me ask you a
side.
question. Why do you hate that step?
Days are days, like just count it out. And I mean, sometimes like a 5-day due diligence for the holidays, and depending what day turns into like 8 or 9 days, like just get it done. And
Well,
But
and
the
that's
problem is I do not want to. Perfect example this weekend. If the other agent, now you're different, but if in a typical agent, if a due diligence ends on Saturday, okay, and especially in the fall, like the perfect example is this weekend, I'll be at Auburn in the middle of a stadium. I'm not going to want to negotiate at 4:30 on Saturday when I'm there. And I've had agents who I've told them where I'm going to be, and they pull that crap.
mm-hmm.
That's why I put it in there. That's my family time. That's a thing I do in the fall. To do that, I've had it where people try to pull that on me at 9:30 on a Saturday night. There's just no reason to be doing that.
yeah, so I do put in a time stip that, all time periods end at 9 p.m. as opposed to midnight. But weekends are weekends, and if you send me that offer, I'll cross that out.
Well,
I've
this was
literally
the
had
case.
clients tell me walk away from the deal if the other agent is going to be that way.
So,
And and I think for me, it's a relationship like we started at the very beginning. So I'm going to have a conversation with you and I'm going to tell you it's going to fall on a Saturday if I do 5 days. So neither one of us wants to do that. So I'm just going to make it 7 days so it starts on Monday. And people appreciate that because, like you say, we feel like a lot of times agents slip things, under the covers really quickly and we may miss something. So I think it's important to create that relationship up front to say, I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to, pull the wool over your eyes. Do you want to work on a Saturday? They're typically going to say no. So let's just move it to Monday. And they're okay with
And
it.
I've had that conversation also. I've definitely had that conversation. The part of the reason why I do that is also when you start negotiating, you don't know when you're going to end the negotiation. Is it going to be done that day? Is it going to be done in 3 days? So those days can shift during that time. And I'll be honest with you, and probably I've used that thing 100 times. I've only had one agent ever debate me on it out of 100 times.
Was it Amy?
No, it was not.
somebody on my team, I don't mind 7 days, but I hate that weekends and holidays, like
Well,
don't
and
know.
the funny
I'm
thing
the
is for
one that
me,
I have to be.
the funny thing for me is the listing agent actually asked me to do that instead of 7 days. And I don't know why she wanted to have a shorter due diligence, but then we ended up getting 2 extra days because she wanted me to write the stip in, which I was like, that's fine with me. Because I'm with you,
Yeah.
David. You don't know for sure when you're going to go binding, depending on the situation. So, you know, you may think you're counting it out to Monday or Tuesday, but then, you know, you end up going sooner. I don't know. Anyway, it worked out. It all worked out. But yeah, she
Yeah.
wanted it. That listing agent actually wanted that stip.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to special stipulations. Um, how, in the context of a contract and everything, how much do you all get hung on special stipulations in your negotiations? And what are the ones, what types of special stipulations? We all have our standards that we put into a contract, unless it's multiple offers, we have to go in, you know, hot and clean. But how much challenge do y'all have on the special stipulations?
I try and avoid them until due diligence if I can. I try to write clean offers.
Okay. And what are the special stipulations that you write in when you're in that due diligence area?
Um, Goodness. I mean, like, I don't know that I have a whole lot that I need to use. I'm not,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, it depends on the,
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is that for some reason, you guys can agree or disagree with me. It seems to me like special stipulations can be a big touchstone of argument, you know, in there. I've seen people blow up when I've been in a house that I know is not really overly clean, or I can tell that somebody's not taking really good care about it. I'll put in there, have it professionally cleaned, you know, 48 hours before closing. You know, for some reason that gets reactions out of people. I don't know why, necessarily. You can tell me if there's a reason why, and I'm just, you know, being stupid and not seeing it. Um, you know, reactions to home warranties. We always put in that there has to be a you know, clear termite letter provided in there. Are you guys doing that?
Done it in a while because of the multiple offer situation. I mean, unless it's a VA loan, I won't put it in the beginning. I'll usually add that during due diligence, and we'll also have the backup information of what the inspector says as well.
Right. Right.
And it also depends if they have a transferable bond or not.
Right. Right. I guess maybe I'm just too upfront in deals. I usually put that stuff. So I just lay it out right from the beginning, you know, at what it is. Instead of there. I think the reason why may be that I remember when I first started, I had somebody who it was on a property that was like 10 acres, and the house had a gravel driveway. And I'd been out to the house, I knew the house, the gravel driveway was perfectly fine, there was no issues. And they, you know, except for one spot which they didn't ask for, but what I got hung on was they asked for the gravel driveway to be totally redone, they asked for the house to be repainted, you know, in there. And I feel that those were things that, if those were issues, we should have discussed that during negotiation, you know, versus, let's say, a leak under the sink, which, you know, I wouldn't have known about necessarily in doing that. I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm too forthright in there. I mean, you tell me what you think in terms of when you're negotiating through the ATAC.
I mean, those are pretty big items. I would want to have a cause for it. I think as a listing agent, I would suspect if that was something coming my way, if something was wrong, and I'd want to prepare my seller for it ahead of time. Like, I am really big about discussing things of concern so that when we're making a decision, it's not the first time they're hearing it from me. So if the
Right.
house really did need to be painted and they won't paint it, okay, I may agree to list it, but I need to have a conversation with them that what happens if they want it painted? Is this a deal killer for you or not?
Right. Right. And I've had those discussions with clients before, the weird color dining room,
Mhm.
it's like, I'll say to them, it's like, this is a bit unusual. Be ready that may be something that comes in a negotiation, of that sort. On there. In that particular situation, the house was beige. It was the most beige house on the planet. So there wasn't there were, it was just they didn't like beige. They wanted them to pay for the repainting in doing that. I mean, if you put stipulations into your original contract, what are some that you put in?
I put in the time stipulation every time because
Okay,
I'm not going to be up at midnight. So
fully respect that. Fully
So,
respect that.
obviously from a buyer's perspective, if your buyer's buying a condo, you put the condo step for the lender, the 528, I think it is. I just had a situation where I have a condo listing. The offer came in with a 21-day or 25-day financing contingency. And I was like, wait a minute. So I went back to the lender and I said, okay, can you shorten that down? And the counter offer, I actually put the condo step in because I didn't want the financing contingency to be 25 days. So the condo, to me, the condo step is critical if you have a buyer or if you're listing a condo.
Yeah, I've seen that more and more. I mean, obviously, we do a good amount in the building that I live in, and
Mhm.
I don't see it all the time. And fortunately, the HOA company here has been both of we just flipped over to a new one. Both of them have been very responsive. But
Yeah.
if you've got someone, and I know I'm going to throw them under the bus, but if you've got CMA, someone like that, you need that in there. I've
And we
literally
do.
had to,
And we
yeah,
do, and they're awful.
yeah, I've literally had to go to their office and stand on someone's desk, to
Mhm.
get paperwork. So, I get it entirely. What there is. What other items do you put into your deals? Well, obviously, I'm way too verbose in my special stipulation box, in what I did. So, see, I can learn also. I can learn. I'm not giving up my due diligence on the weekend thing, but I'm just still learning. Okay, so let's go on to the next step. You've done due diligence. You've done. This is the last big negotiating item. Is you've done due diligence. You've got your ATAC together. um, there's 7 or 8 items that are on there. When you're talking, once again, negotiating with your own client, how do you have a conversation with your client about the items? Because we've inevitably had the person who says, I want every single thing fixed on here. Then, or the other one who says, I want $15,000 off the price on a $350,000 house, you know. Um, or it's a 2-year air conditioning unit. But of course, the inspector says it's middle-aged already. You get ready for it to be, to die. And I'm being melodramatic, mind you. But they want that. How do you have those how do you negotiate through those conversations with your own client when you're the buyer?
So when I get an inspection report, I always say, let's look at it, wait overnight, and let's look at it in the morning, because for some reason it's way better in the morning. It never seems as drastic. And I always ask them, I want you to tell me your top 3 concerns. And I'm going to pick out my top 3 concerns and we're going to talk, and hopefully they match. So I want to know what those buyers' concerns are. Like, I literally had a client cancel a contract because one of the outlets in the basement had that reverse polarity. It was just something that freaked them out. And if anybody knows, it just means the red and the black wires in the wrong space and you just fix them. It's
Yeah.
nothing. It takes 5 seconds. So you just can never really know what is the hot point for the buyer. And so that's why I ask that. And I try and talk them through, why is this an issue for you? And that way I can communicate to the other side why we're asking for what we're asking and why that's a deal killer, and to let them know.
Right. So what I do a lot of times, I will tell people that I don't go after normally the honey-do list items.
Mhm.
You know, a perfect example of what you just gave, of something of that sort. I look at the big rocks. You know, is there a major issue with the roof? Is there a major issue with HVAC? Does the oven not work? You know, things that are operational. I look at it from an operational safety and code thing. And for those of us who've been in the business for a while, that's how we used to do the what we now call due diligence or the repair period with that. And it seems to, I do like your thinking though, wait till the next day, because getting an inspection report a lot of times is like these emotional darts thrown at you. It's like, oh my God, this, oh my God, that, you know, how, you know, it's like having your girlfriend or boyfriend saying you know, this is wrong with you, that's wrong with you, that's wrong with you. And instead of reacting immediately, you got to give some time to absorb and analyze, you know, and come back, you know, in doing that.
I like that
how
idea too, Amy. I like that idea of giving them
I do it with
overnight.
sellers as well. I tell them to read it, sleep on it, and read it tomorrow, and then we'll talk. But
I agree wholeheartedly.
point,
Yeah.
I have a lot of those conversations about the honey-do list versus the deal killers while we're looking at a house. So that by the time we're under contract, again, it's not the first time they're hearing this from me, and we can make a quick decision.
So that brings up another point. Once again, I'm really surprised. Negotiating with your own client is a large part of this.
It is.
You know, I was looking at it from a different perspective. Do you guys, when you're walking through a house, both on a listing side and a buyer side, when you're on the listing side and you do those walkthroughs as you're getting a house ready for listing, do you point out to your clients, okay, this could be a challenge. I just want you to be aware, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay. And do you do that also on the buyer side saying, you know, I'm trying to think of an example. You
So
know,
wood
let's
rot would be a great example, right?
wood rot, molding on the outside.
Wood rot.
Yeah, that's
It's not a big deal, and it's not hard to or expensive to fix. But some buyers know that, some don't, and some are more sensitive to it than others, depending on how much, if it's their first house, if they're handy. So I'll always point that out and discuss that through the buying process, so that it's not a big deal when the inspection comes, unless there's a ton of wood rot, you know?
right, right. And that's another thing, is that when you're talking, negotiating, whatever phrase you want to use with your client, is that you will find out pretty quickly there's something that has occurred. I'm going to jokingly say in a past life or in a past home buying experience that is a very sensitive thing to them, you know,
Yes.
and it varies from person to person. Like I knew somebody, they were very sensitive to mold. You know, that's a very common one. Oh, my second cousin on my husband's, you know, step parent side or whatever, they had a whole mold situation occur. You know, I really wanted checked out, which is totally fine. We've got Chris to be able to do that. Or you may have somebody who, you know, they moved into a house and 4 days after they moved into it, the whole HVAC system blew out and they had to replace it. You're inevitably going to find that. And while in your head mentally, you may be rolling your eyes, please do not do it physically. You have to be, you have to be understanding of what that is, because even all of us who are on this call, when we're buying a place, there's going to be something that we're more sensitized to than another one of us on this call. And it's called life experiences to do that. And I can tell you, fortunately not from life experience, but from other people, my own life experience from other people, if you want to piss off a client, is do not show empathy towards something that may have occurred to them. You know, they're looking to you to understand their reasoning. You may not agree with their reasoning, but you got to understand it. And like I keep going back to this example of conversation last night. I probably something has happened in that client's life that makes them very paranoid that everyone's out to get them. I mean, someone kicked their puppy and stole the puppy at the same time for them to be that way. They're very paranoid that someone's out there. We're literally 48 hours away from closing. And I started getting frustrated because she was calling me at 7:30 at night about this. And but you got to understand that there's just something there. Now there's a limit to everything. If they keep going on and on and on, you got to shut down the conversation. But you do need to be empathetic to it with it. What
David,
yes, ma'am.
hey, we really like to, in our buyer, if we're working with a buyer in that presentation, that consultation, excuse me. And also when we talk with the sellers, we try to prepare them that, they're going to look at the underbelly of your house and, it's going to have a ton of stuff and, don't feel bad about that. This happens all the time. For the buyers, we discuss that and that due diligence period. And, I usually say, look, in this, we're not getting the whole house fixed up great. What we're trying to do, we want to fix broken arms and broken legs, and the bumps and bruises are things that you can address later on. We're really wanting to get satisfaction on the big ticket items, and people are really good about that, but we start that in the buyer's consult.
And I do too. I mean, that's sort of how I'm calling it big rocks. That conversation. I just think that's really, really, really important in terms of setting expectations with the buyer.
Yes.
As far as that goes.
Especially if you're looking, at resales. I mean, and a house is much older, we just have to say, look, there's going to be a lot of history here. And, if there's something big that's going to come up in the first couple of years, we might want them to address it. Another thing we really try to do is we like to negotiate, money, cash instead of repairs, if at all possible. And the reason
that's getting more and
like,
more popular. I would say probably 60% of the deals I've done this year have been like, extra closing costs. For some of those of you or they're newer, what you can do instead of saying, okay, fix, 1, 2, 4, electrical outlets, things of that nature, you can say, why don't you contribute another $1,000 toward our closing costs? We'll call it even. That gets us around the underwriter. When they see the word repair, they freak out. And that walks us around. When you're the listing agent, it's good because then you don't have to coordinate the repairs. And my class example of it always is where I had a listing in Brookhaven on a townhouse, and we had something on a plumbing line, a leak underneath the sink in the basement. The plumber nicked the wrong line and it flooded the whole basement. If we had just done that, that ended up having Epic come out. I mean, it was a mess. The plumber was totally responsible and they were great. They took care of it all. But it was a mess to deal with. So it's much simpler if you can walk around it and do it that way.
Especially on the listing side, we really try to go for that because they're packing up, they're getting ready to leave, okay, let's give them $1,000 to fix this thing that they're stuck on. Plus, if you're on the buyer side, somebody could come in and like what happened to you, mess something up or do a shoddy repair, have a bad, repairman and or somebody that, they're not familiar with. And it's hard to tell if something was done right. But when you do it yourself, then only you're to blame. And, it kind of helps pull you out of that. So we really try hard to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. What about you, Amy? Do y'all do that?
She might have had to leave.
No, she's there. I'm looking at her.
Oh,
So it's usually word from my side, let's make sure we get it fixed the way you want it. And
Yeah.
on the seller side, you know, like Lori said, they're moving, they have other things to do, and it's just easier in most cases. And also sometimes, you know, they ask for something that could lead to something else, and I don't want to get put in that situation. So I really push the sellers to offer money.
yeah.
Good. Good. Okay.
Yeah. And most agents, I mean, you know, surprisingly so, the last couple of years, most agents have been A-okay with that.
Oh yeah, no, we've done this so much more than we have, and it makes my life so much easier.
It
Being
does.
able
You're
to do that.
done. You're
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
You
you're
know,
done, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. With
nobody's
it,
coming back with an inspection, a post inspection, you know, the inspector coming back and who knows, finding something else. I mean, you know, it just makes it much, much,
I
much
agree with you.
cleaner.
I agree with you. So we got a couple of minutes left, and I want to be respectful to end on time for you guys. Any ahas, thoughts, questions, that y'all may have? Nope. Well, obviously we've covered everything there is to ever know in a negotiation.
No, it was great. Have you talked about negotiation on price?
No, we haven't really talked about that. That can do today. I sort of wanted to go through a contract, you know, and how
Okay.
we negotiate those parts. We will come back and lean that. Like I said, you came on
I
a
think
couple of
that
us
would
later.
be a good one.
Yeah, Dina has sort of wants us to go through. There's like a list of 7 different items, like negotiating, listing, open house, marketing, things of that, to have at least one class on each one. I think it's 7 items that month. This one I picked up negotiation for this month. We'll definitely come back around to it again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, I think
I'll add just one thing that you sort of touched on. If I
Sure.
have the time, I really try not to negotiate when I'm kind of stressed or angry about something. Like I sometimes have to say, I'm not going to call the client for 2 hours because I'm kind of annoyed at the way, you know, somebody presented something, and taking the emotion out of it just makes for a
Yeah.
better conversation.
it does, and it takes, and if you're somebody who is a bit more emotionally based, you need to take those couple of hours. You have to train yourself not to just pick up the phone right away. If you ever see me walk at the office walking around the building, circular around the building, that's because I'm trying to walk it off. You know, it's not me just having a you know, an aneurysm. I'm just trying to get it off of me. It doesn't happen often, but you know, it happens to all of us at some point. You know, it's just
It
inevitable.
does.
Well,
Um,
I find that new agents, that's the biggest thing. They get so emotionally involved that it just takes a lot out of them, and they're trying to get something together when you're involved emotionally is almost impossible. So that's a
Yeah.
great idea, Amy's, just to take a little time before you start responding to something.
you have to detach yourself. You have
Yeah,
to.
I have something to add about when you're going to be doing your negotiation, say on the buyer side, because I'm doing more buyers, and you know, you have the listing agent says, look, my client, you know, when you make your offer, they're not going to fix any nitpicky stuff. Don't be asking for a lot of things. You can't let them intimidate you and not ask for stuff, because I know there's a lot of newer, like even newer than I am. I'm pretty new, but you can't let them intimidate you and not ask for things, you know, because you can get stuck getting a house that's just like a mess for your client. So
No, I agree with you. And the thing is,
Agreed.
what I always tell clients is, there's going to be, when you ask for things, or when you offer it first, there's only 1 of 3 responses you're going to get back. It's not complicated. It's either going to be
Yes.
yes, we'll do it, thank you, but no thank you, or they're going to counter. You know,
Yes.
and in that initial thing is 95% of the time they're going to counter. You know, to do that, it's just not overly. And if you do it to sort of bookend this, if you do it professionally and you do it with the
Yes.
right air, then you'll be okay. If you come in and you're an arrogant SOB and think that you own the world and that there's no other agent better than you that's been doing this for 832 years, you're not going to get deals done. You know, it's just the reality, especially when you're in the South, to do that. You know, if we were in Jersey, maybe they do things differently, but in Atlanta, you just do that. And I will tell you from a rep point of view, even though we have God knows how many realtors in Atlanta, and most of them are in the air flying Delta at the moment, this is a small community, and the producers know the producers, and they know their reps to do that. And one of the things that Mike always talked about, and I wholeheartedly agree with him, one of your biggest assets is your reputation. And that's where it has to uphold itself during the negotiating process. So
yes. And don't ask scared when you're the buyer's agent. Don't say, well, we really need them to fix that. Don't ask scared. Ask with confidence, and project that when you can project that in a very nice way.
Yeah, sure, of course you can.
And especially if there's a reason that something's super important, like if it looks like the basement has flooded and they dried it up, but they didn't really do any kind of repair. And you've had a client who've had a basement flood and it was a complete disaster. You might say, my client has had this happen before, and this was one of the things that they told me up front. They wanted to make positive sure that they didn't have this happen again.
Right.
And usually another agent that has any kind of experience can understand that.
Yeah, no, I understand. All right, well, we're a couple of minutes over. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been a great discussion. Hopefully it's shed some light on stuff for you guys. We'll be back again next month. I have no idea what I'm talking about though. We'll figure it out. I know I picked it, I just don't remember it. If any of y'all want, if there's anything that you take out of this for a to-do item, create that list of dates. I call them D-dates. Create that list and put it in as part of your transaction management. It will make your life easier. So
I like what Amy said about adding it to our contract. I mean, you could put it in the special steps that it'll be added within 48 hours. And I love that, something like that.
Yeah, definitely so.
I like that.
All right. Y'all have a great day and go sell something with 8% interest rates. So
yeah.
talk to you later.
Thanks, David. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.